Okay, roll your attack roll. Alright, you passed your sword skill. Now, he'll try to parry your attack. Ooh, looks like he critically failed. Do your damage roll. And you slayed the dragon. And you completed this dungeon. Congratulations! Welcome to the GURPS protocol? So, yeah, this is the real me. Hi, my name's Liam. But you could still call me Diceyed. I figured it was time to show a more human version of me. Be more flexible with the design. Also removing the old voice modulator. It was fun at first, but people said that it was hard to understand what I was saying. This should be a more permanent design setup for the room. I've been like different tables and whatnot. Hopefully this should keep consistent from here on. Oh right, today's episode, GURPS, combat. We gotta go over combat. Much like any rules in GURPS, combat itself is a flexible system. Every game master is unique, and so is their game. So GURPS understands this and makes it completely open-ended on what GMs will allow or not. With that being said, I'll go over the stuff that I know personally that I use and some stuff that I don't use. But this should not limit you on how you play. If you want a more deeper dive, we'll be referencing chapters 11 through 13 in the GURPS base set. As for now, let's delve into the game. So this episode will go over a few main notes, how combat works, and what actions you can perform. First off, out of the way, Chapter 12, Tactics Combat, starts off talking about hex grid gameplay. So, your tokens move along a hex space map. I do not use this. Some folks like hex rule. I find them kind of hard to do straight line map making. Most rooms are square based, so it's really difficult to have people go in straight lines and hallways and all that stuff. I find that kind of difficult. I find hex is fine for large exploratory maps, like whole jungles and whatnot. But dungeon crawling, I find them too tedious. Plus there's rules about facing. I find them very cumbersome as well. So I just adapt square-based movement. And that's purely up to you. This is just how I play. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the combat. So, combat is mostly just a bunch of skill checks in a row. If you haven't watched my video on skills, I recommend it to understand. We'll start with some very basic skills here. So we have the player here on the left that's using a short sword. And their short sword skill, I'll try saying that 5 times fast. They roll a 3d6. And the total of their dice needs to be under their skill value, just like any other skill. So, player passes their skill. Now it's onto the enemy. Now, if this was an NPC enemy, GM might just want to auto-range their rolls, fake it to make it faster, but will roll instead. Defending enemy has 3 options: dodge, block, and parry. Dodge is based off of your movement speed and your encumbrance level, so if you're a fast light character, this is a good choice for you. Blocking is +3 half your chosen skill or cloak skill. You have to use blocking equipment readied for this, but it's good for big tanky types. Parrying is when you use your melee weapon to deflect the attack. Most melee weapons can parry, but there are weapons with the unbalanced trait that you can. Your parry score is 3 plus half that chosen weapon skill. So each have their pros and cons. For in this case, the enemy has a shield ready to block. He's ready to defend. Let's roll to see his block skill. The roll was higher than his block skill, so he got hit. On to the player's damage. Each weapon has its own type of damage. Crushing, cutting, impaling. There are a few common ones. They're usually marked on the weapon. Some armor or creatures are immune to different kinds of damage. Skeletons, for example, don't care if you impale it. For the short sword, it's marked as SW cut or THR imp. That's a little confusing to understand at first, but let's break it down. Short sword has two types of attacks, cutting or impaling. Both of these use two different kinds of damage modifiers. SW means swing, and THR means thrust damage. Way back when character creation, you chose your strength modifier for your output, for your damage output. So let's use strength of 10. That means thrust is a 1d6 minus 2, while swing is a 1d6. Let's take that swing modifier because it's the better option. Since the sword doesn't add anything to your score, means your damage 1d6. And there we go. Now once you get used to this, your scores will be ready and waiting when you need them, so you don't have to constantly refer back to former information. There is one bit I do want to note before we go over. There's hit location in GURPS. My standard is if you're doing a normal regular attack, you're generally aiming for the torso, and as there is no penalty to hitting a weapon there. But some armor and some creatures may have different defenses against different body parts. You might want to attack those parts, but you also have to take a negative to hit in some cases. Most players I play with, I usually ignore this rule unless there's a specific weak point or they do a critical strike and want a random hit location. Now I simplify a lot of combat, but that's the basics. The GM might add or remove any stat depending on the side, depending on many factors. But for now, let's move on to action economy. Unlike more modern systems, GURPS 4th edition falls onto one main action per turn. Honestly, this is one of the worst drawbacks GURPS combat has in my opinion. I got really spoiled by Pathfinder 2nd edition's 3 action economy. It doesn't mean you're stuck with small actions, but you have to plan your actions a bit more thoroughly. Let's use this setup. It's your turn and you're a few steps away from the enemy. Your weapon isn't long enough to reach, so you need to find a way of planning your actions. A common way is to use the move and attack act. While it sounds like 2 actions, it's actually marked as 1. You get your full movement, and when it's your turn to defend, you can choose to dodge or block. Unfortunately, due to you moving and doing your attack roll at the same time, you'll be at a -4, which has a higher chance of missing. And if you're skilled at parrying, you don't have the option to use this, so you're wide open to an attack. Let's think of other things. You could spend your turn evaluating, you get all your active defense options, and you get a +1 bonus on your next attack onto the enemy of your choice. So that's pretty useful. You could use the wait skill, which wait until he gets into range of your attack, and then you can do all kinds of attacks. Feint, all out, or any ready maneuvers. Let's say you're worried about deflecting his incoming attack, and you just need to draw his attention for a while someone else helps clear him out for you. Well, this is where all-out defense comes into play. You may not be able to attack this turn, But you could choose to do a +2 on your chosen defense type, or you could roll 2 different defenses and take the better option. There's a lot more types of actions, including the different types of all-out attack. It's best to read up on your plan of action before getting into a fight. Oh, and there are free actions. You could do talk, drop item, crouch, and more. Um, GM may allow other things. I personally allow knowledge-based skill checks once per round as a free action as well. That's just to help give knowledge around so they're not fighting in the dark. As for now, you kind of get the gist of combat. Simply put, unlike most D20 systems, you're not rolling against an enemy's basic defense. You are both rolling your respective skills. This means combat is way more flexible, and you aren't just trying to hit a static number and the GM has in secret. But this episode is kind of getting long. I'd like to go more over combat, but for now, I think this is enough. This has been Diceyed on the GURPS protocol. Thank you for watching.